committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order. First thing we'll need is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, I will need a motion to approve our agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Candace? Okay, Candace second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Approval of meeting minutes from our May 28th meeting. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes? They look fine. If not, I'd like to have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes.
All right, need a second.
Second.
All right, have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All righty. We'll move on to item 2A, remote learning plan. Dr. Breedlove, is that you?
Yes, sir. I appreciate, thank you all for being here this morning, and just want to go through a couple of few items that we have for the committee today. And the first item here is the remote learning plan. And this really stems from work at the state level. As you know, the calendar has 5 remote learning days with the ability to have more if we need, and that is pushed down from the state. Moving into the 2020-2021 school year, the state is requiring all public school units to develop a remote learning plan. As you know, that last year, or this past school year, we ended the year in remote learning. The state, due to COVID-19 and preparations for that, is requiring all districts to submit a remote learning plan that is really based on 15 questions that I shared in the board docs that you have access to. Working with the academics team, as well as various departments within our school district, we were able to provide those attached responses. And keep in mind that this is just a draft at this point. It is due on July 20th. So our team will be working to clean up this draft. As you see, there's probably some grammar and syntax errors that we will correct. But what this really does gives the committee an idea of what the state is asking school districts, what is asking Union County Public Schools. We learned a lot this past year from remote learning, and we want to make sure that moving into the school year, which has a minimum of 5 remote learning days, that we are as well prepared as we can be. And we are taking the information that we have learned, and correcting any mistakes that we've identified to make sure that the experience for our students K-12 is a better experience. So we're really bringing this to the curriculum committee so that you're aware of what the state is, like I said, asking of us. The document provides stakeholders with an overview of the entire remote learning experience, provides principals and our teachers as well within our district with what the expectations are, so that when schools are supporting when principals are supporting their teachers and when teachers are supporting students, they know what the district-wide expectations are, and now we can have further insight into how remote learning will play out for the upcoming school year. We all hope that we aren't in remote learning for more than 5 days, but we do need to have this tool at its ready in a moment's notice. And so at this point, you've had an opportunity to look it over. Are there any questions that you have about this draft for remote learning?
We have this as a later agenda item, but just to share with you, Tina and Candace, one of the concerns I expressed to Dr. Breedlove, which our family is experiencing firsthand with this remote learning, is the lack of socialization among students at ages that it is critical. And I asked them to, and will ask them to give some thought to perhaps addition to this information with trying to develop some type of model where we utilize, if possible, our transportation and our existing school facilities on for some limited basis to provide interaction with students in a safe means. In other words, like a club that meets for a couple hours or a morning a week, depending on grade level. Some type of direct social interaction among our students so they don't completely forget how to act in the classroom, conflict resolution, getting along with their peers. For, I live in a neighborhood where we don't have kids my son's age. So he's not only is he losing how to, frankly, act in a classroom in a controlled situation, but just interaction with kids his age. All the summer camps have been closed. The aquatic center is closed. Any means for social interaction for kids his age, organized activities, have completely shut down. And I'm hoping that we could somehow encompass a model on a voluntary basis, of course, some means for us to still provide some opportunities for interaction. And not unlike, I know there are organized groups within the homeschooling network that provide a structured interaction. And I'm using that as kind of the baseline. And I wanted to add, and I did ask Dr. Breedlove, we discussed it briefly, if we could devise, perhaps encompassed in this document, some possibility of being able to do that at UCPS if we are faced with a total virtual learning environment like we're in now. And that, do you have anything to add to that, Dr. Breedlove?
Well, I would say that if we look at limitations per se in remote learning, that definitely is a limitation that we need to try and overcome and find a way to do that, because I'm a parent too of two children, and children need social interaction. As adults, we do that. Nobody likes working from, I don't like working from home. I'd much rather be at the office and out in schools and doing what we all signed up for. And that students are craving that as well. And when we talk about social emotional learning and just the whole child development, it is so important that we need to figure out how we can help parents and help students possibly do this. And so that is a limitation, of course, with coronavirus and making sure that we are keeping our students' health and safety at the forefront of whatever decisions are made. But it could be something like a small group, just interaction, social distance, and being able to do something like that. And I do think that our principals and teachers and school staff would be very interested in working this problem and how we might be able to do that with the existing resources.
So I would maybe ask that I think putting some documentation in the limitations section is probably a good idea that speaks to this, that maybe we could say to the greatest extent possible and in accordance with the guidelines surrounding large group gatherings in school or out of school, and in accordance with health and safety guidelines, UCPS will strive to continue to allow for clubs, extracurricular where possible on a voluntary basis. I think my only question, Gary, would be around transportation. That may be an issue. And then the other thing that we all need to think about is, according to the requirements set forth by the state, if a school district or a school is under Plan C, as you all will remember, we have three possible plans: Plan A, is kind of like going back with a few restrictions, but everyone comes back at the same time. Plan B is a minimum of 50% capacity, and Plan C is remote learning. What we're talking about on this item is Plan C. And the state has said that as a requirement under Plan C, all buildings are closed for staff. And so, I think it's a situation where if you have 50% under Plan B, if a student isn't in school and is not doing face-to-face instruction for a day or a week or whatever that might be, I think that they technically would be doing remote learning, right? And I think even on those days where the buildings are open, that would be a consideration. But I think we should put it in the limitations. And I also think a good place to look will be next week. July 6th is the first time we bring back our student athletes on a voluntary basis for workouts. And it will be in groups of less than 25 of outdoors. And there are very strict criteria on how that's going to work. So I think we can look to them to see how that goes with any lessons learned to also add into that section if we need to.
Well, plus we should have the next week, the governor should be making, if not this week,
Tomorrow.
Call what plan we're under, right?
I think it's supposed to be by July 1st. So hopefully we'll hear something by tomorrow.
So this may all be moot if it's Plan C, remote learning, the buildings are closed. No sense working on this option because, like you said, buildings are closed. What are they going to do? Just meet outside? What have you. Okay. All right. I just want to throw that out there as consideration. Does anybody else have any other questions on this plan?
No, Dr. Houlihan hit on some of the questions that I had, so I'm good.
Candace? All right. And we'll move on to 2B.
Dr. Houlihan.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Did you have a question, Candace?
No.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to 2B, which is Leader in Me program. Dr. Breedlove?
All right. Yes, sir. Recently, we were provided with an opportunity to purchase what's called a district membership in Leader in Me, and the resources. This is really talking about resources. In the documentations, I put in there several bullets on what this resource will provide our district. It really was a no-brainer for us to purchase the district membership. That does not mean that we are district-wide Leader in Me. We have set schools that are Leader in Me schools, and of course I put those in there. But what this does is the $8,500 that we spent on the Leader in Me district membership, it really lowers the cost for those Leader in Me schools. If you think of the district as a total budget in one solid unit, the $8,500 that was spent by the Office of Academics lowered the amount that individual schools were purchasing these products by $17,830, thus saving a net savings of $9,330 to the district. But what it also does is it provides non-member schools with access to the materials that are exclusive to Leader in Me. And so I've put the all access to exclusive resources in there. And as you can see, it's a pretty long list of resources that are available to our district schools, regardless if they're Leader in Me schools or not. And so as you see, there's a lot of SEL, social emotional learning elements there. There's the 7 habits, a lot of 7 habits materials there that are just good quality materials that have been vetted time and time again. And we know from a leadership aspect that these resources can be used across the district at that point. So I just wanted you to know that that purchase had been made for not just our Leader in Me schools, but for our district as a whole, thus also saving the district just over $9,000 as a whole.
I'm going to be here.
Anybody have any questions on that Leader in Me update?
Okay. Mark, and I need you to notarize our.
Okay.
And we need to have one.
See that Mr. Side stepped away for a moment.
All right.
Go ahead and move on.
Okay.
Mr. Brady or Dr. Brady, please.
All right. So if that's the case, there are no questions on that update. We will go to 2C, which is the remote
Summer
jumpstart. And with that, each year, our school system typically takes, we have a summer camp. It's a reading camp. It's through Read to Achieve. Well, this year we're calling it the Summer Jumpstart. I have put the documentation once again in the board docs, and you can see that with part of the Summer Jumpstart Camp, you know, we are offering not only reading intervention, but we're also going to be offering math intervention. COVID-19 and ending the school year with remote learning has really caused the state to revamp and to provide additional resources to help even more students than we typically have. I think last year we were able to offer just over 800 students, close to 800 students, the summer reading camp. This year we have 1,113 students that were identified. The curriculum is based on iStation, reading and math. The Summer Jumpstart is a remote intervention for reading and math. We do have teachers that are assigned. We have curriculum that is available through iStation, through Myon. And what's not on here that I want you all to know as well is that even though it's remote, what we've done is we've built in small group sessions throughout the day. There are morning sessions that start from 8 until noon that students can pick and choose on which hour-long session that they want to jump in on. And it's a live video like this where there's 4 or 5 students per teacher, and that teacher is working with those students in small groups. Then there's an hour additional reading and intervention outside of the face-to-face. So students are really in the sessions for 2 hours. And instead of going 2 weeks at 4 hours, we decided that it was probably best to extend the amount of time that we're working with students for the whole month. So we're doing 2 hours a day for the entire month, starting on July 6th all the way through July 31st. Students have access to Chromebooks, chargers. We were able to get those to all students that are in the camp. There are level text. We've provided additional resources such as whiteboards, markers. They're just smaller whiteboards that the students can work on and show the teacher via online. We have additional resources such as Blackline Masters packets. These are basically work materials that the students will have access to, 10-sided dice, scissors, and the list goes on. Also, the selection process, I want to talk to you a little bit about according to the state, there are priorities in there built in. Our priority for reading is 2nd grade and 3rd grade reading, and it's really based on iStation levels that the students had until, of course, schools were closed in March, and that's based on their iStation levels of 1 and 2 and middle of the year results. Second priority was kindergarten and 1st grade reading. Once again, the same thing, iStation levels 1 and 2. Those are the students that are trending red and yellow that needed additional support. And then 3rd priority was 4th grade reading, and then K through 4 math, and in order to get those students math. And so that's really how students were identified. And once again, we extended the amount of the number of students that are participating this year to 1,113 students. You can see on there the sites and administrators. Even though we're remote, we still have to have administrators and teachers obviously working those camps. And what I've done here is put in here is, as you see, is schools like East and Rockrest, they're combining the students so that we have enough students there. And you can see that the home base is Health Science Academy at Monroe Middle School for them, because we had to have a home base in order to send the supplies and then get those supplies out to the individual students and families. Kelly Marks Fritz, as you can see, is the site administrator overseeing the teachers. And so each one of those schools has a site that is the main site for supplies and for contact, where that administrator will be established as well. And then you can see the overall budget for this this project. We were given just over $1.175 million for the project. It's again available on, that money was dropped down, will be dropped down on July 1st. There's no transportation, there's no child nutrition, even though we are having feeding sites this summer and continuing that going. And then, of course, the breakdown of what the state mandates and how the money is to be used: 50% for second and third grade reading. Of that 50%, 75% has to be used in the summer, but they're allowing us to reserve 25% of that amount of money to roll over into the fall for additional remediation. And so we will be doing that, offering after school programs or programs on the weekend to continue to help students who identified with that aren't proficient or aren't at grade level in reading and math. Does anybody have any questions about our summer reading camp this year? Reading and math, I guess, is what it is this year.
Any questions? Okay. We've already discussed item 2D, so I will move to item 3A, College Board Renewal.
Yes, as you are aware, in our budget, we do have just over 180,000 that was designated to our accountability and research department for College Board contract. Last year, we put into play the SAT and SAT, pre-SAT, PSAT 8-9. We did not have additional funding rolling over, and this is a new contract year for College Board. If we were to try to provide the SAT for those students that missed the SAT last year that the district purchases, which is our juniors who are now seniors, and we try to purchase the SAT for the current sitting juniors, as well as the PSAT 8-9, the bill was going to be over $300,000. Of course, we don't have a line item for $300,000 for College Board. So it is recommended that to the board that we honor our commitment to the seniors and allow our seniors to take an in-school SAT for the upcoming school year. Those are the group that we promised the SAT for, and we should deliver on that promise. And that SAT is scheduled for September, assuming that all things are go and we can have 100% of the students in the school. Obviously, this is a moot point if we are in a situation that we can't offer the SAT during a school day because of guidelines passed down from the state. And so the proposal here is the SAT for the 12th grade, and then we continue the PSAT for the 10th grade and the National Merit Scholarship portion of that PSAT, which goes to the top 10% of students scoring on the PSAT the year before, to those juniors who are in the top 10% on that score, to allow them to retake the PSAT so that they have an option, they have the opportunity for a National Merit Scholarship, which is technically for those students that score in the top 5%, but we widened our net to include 10% of the students. And you can see there that it's $120,000 for the 12th grade SAT and then 49,700 for the PSAT and National Merit Scholarship, which is in line with what the previous bill would have been last year. Does anybody have any questions? I know that that's kind of confusing there, but the way I said it, and that's my fault. But does anybody have any questions about College Board renewal contract and how the money will be used this upcoming school year?
I just think, Brad, I'll add on. I mean, I'm always going to say subject to change because we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there will be a fall administration. We don't know what will happen with our rising juniors in the spring. So this is all subject to change, I think, based on where we are as a state and as a school system when we come back in the fall.
Can we get our money back? We just roll it to the, well.
If we are, the way this works, if the tests are not shipped, yes, we get our money back. And we were, you know, we have to keep that in mind as we get closer to that time frame. We will have to make a decision. You know, obviously we don't want to be in a situation where the governor or the state is shutting schools down and we haven't canceled that administration. So this will be something we will have to keep our eye on as we move closer to the fall. And we usually get the test about 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So if we can have a decision made by the state within outside of that time frame, yes, we will cancel and be able to save that money.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to send it to the full board. Any question? Need a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion, need a second.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Item, and so that will be recommended to the full board. Item 3, item B, 3B, virtual K-12 schooling. Dr. Breedlove, you still got your voice?
I'll take this one.
Oh, okay.
So as we've talked about, we expect the governor to make a decision on our reopening plans, plan A, B, or C, hopefully by end of day tomorrow, July the 1st. One of the issues that continuously has come up across the nation really is, and I believe Ms. Helms mentioned this at one of our prior board meetings. What are we going to do if we have families who say, I don't really feel comfortable sending my child back to school in a face-to-face environment? Or what do we do if we have families who say, you know, my child thrives in a remote learning environment? How can I have that 100% of the time? And I've also read a lot of research that's predicting a large number of families who may want that option. And so several weeks ago, we put a survey out to our families to ask for their interest in if we launched a elementary, middle, and high school virtual academy that would almost be kind of like a school within a school model, right? So let's take Porter Ridge Elementary. It would be a Porter Ridge Elementary virtual, you know, something like that as a model. Would you be interested? We had over 17,000 responses. And based on that response, I believe you've been given the slide deck. We had a pretty significant amount of families, I believe upwards of 40%, who said that they would be somewhat interested or very interested in pursuing that as an option if it were available. There's
7%.
Thank you.
46%. Yeah.
46% said that they would be somewhat or very likely to pursue that as an option. I really am concerned about, and I'm not alone in this, about students who may withdraw and choose a different option, like a charter or private that's allowing for this flexibility. And I obviously, as a school system, we should strive every day to keep as many kids as we can in our schools and in our school system from an enrollment standpoint. So we have been working hard on trying to identify a model for a possible option for families if they might want to choose a virtual academy. Basically, they would be choosing remote learning 100% of the time, or plan C. We believe we'll have the flexibility from the General Assembly to do this. There's obviously a lot of fine details we have to still figure out and work through. But I kind of wanted to paint the concept for you. And basically at the elementary, middle, and high school level, where we have enough demand by grade level or probably by grade level or subject, we would be using existing teachers. We would be using existing administrators to oversee this new school model. It would give parents a choice. And as you can imagine, or take what we have right now with UC Virtual at the high school level, a very successful model on virtual programming. That would be replicated within every high school in our building where we have the demand. Middle and elementary school, we don't have a Union County virtual. We kind of have to build this as we go. And that's what we've been exploring. So I kind of wanted to paint the picture for you as to, well, how will this all unfold? Imagine that you're a parent of a middle schooler. We have two children that are, one will be in 8th, one will be in 7th. Basically, if we as a family chose that option, what that means is our kids would get a master schedule just like everyone else would. But instead of going to their classes face to face, they would log into their Canvas account and would actually see their teacher teaching during that block from their class. So every teacher would basically be live streaming instruction in a remote setting, and families and students would be able to log in and see that happening. In order to make this actually work, what you would have to do is make sure that you have enough students of a particular grade level sign up in order to have a dedicated teacher that would serve as the virtual teacher. I do not want to put our teachers in a position where they have to manage face-to-face instruction and virtual instruction at the same time, unless we're on plan B, because on plan B, that will probably be a reality. But on this idea of a virtual learning program, you're really looking at dedicated teachers who will serve as the virtual learning teacher for that school and for that grade level or department. Live instruction, or maybe a little bit of the flipped classroom model that the curriculum committee was briefed on in the past. We're still researching a lot of the different implications of this, but we wanted to let you know what the data says in terms of the demand, and let you know that if we are ready for a full proposal that would need board approval. We have a board meeting next Tuesday, I believe, July the 7th. If we're ready to launch this kind of approach and are able to put it on that agenda, that would be ideal. If not, we'd have to come back in the middle to end of July when we're ready. But we wanted the curriculum committee to know kind of where we are with this idea, that we are moving on this as a concept, and we have a technical proof of concept discussion and meeting tomorrow, because our biggest challenge with the live instruction piece is going to be our internet capabilities. Can we live stream instruction from across every building? That is being tested tomorrow with Mr. Parker and his team. So I'll open it up for questions, but really just wanted to let the curriculum committee kind of know where we are with this idea and give you some insight as to how that might work.
I have a couple quick questions. Do we, where are we on the purchase of 3-5 Chromebooks for grades 3 to 5? Have the orders been placed?
I believe so. In my last discussion with Mr. Parker, we were projecting those to be here around the first week of August. They would be tagged, inventoried, everything that needs to be done. We will plan on issuing devices to grades 3, 4, and 5, either that first week of school, if not prior to. That's our goal.
Then how would we handle the needs for K through 2?
So either A, we would look at a requirement of you have to have your own device at home, or B, if we have older Chromebooks that we could issue that are in good shape, that might be an option. Or C, one thing that we need to still figure out is, by grade level, should we only offer this as an option for grades 3 through 12, right? Do we have the capability for a K2 environment? And if not, maybe it would just be a 3rd through 12th grade, because those grade levels, we have 100% assurance that those students have a device. So those are some of the details we're still trying to think through.
Okay.
Would love some feedback from the committee if you would like to have a preference on that model.
So Dr. Houlihan, do we have an idea of which schools completed this survey?
We have a breakdown on the number of parents and families who completed it by school.
Right.
We'll be happy to send that to you following this meeting if you'd like to see. But we do have it by school. I don't think we have it broken down by grade level, but we have it by school.
Okay.
With those total number of respondents, what do you have a feel for what's the percentage of total students, parents that responded? If it's around 18,000 that responded, that's about half. Am I close in my numbers? Half the parents responded?
It's a little bit more than about a fourth. But keep in mind that within that 17,000, we don't know how many children that represents, right?
Right. Could be one or it could be three in the family.
Correct.
All right, well, that should be it sounds like that's a pretty good response. So that should be a pretty fair result, feedback on the pulse of where the parents are.
Yeah, I think we have the data to support the concept and to move forward with developing this within schools where there is a demand. I think we can figure out the staffing piece, not a problem, as well as the curriculum and the teaching piece. I think we've just got to figure out a few more details on the technical aspect of our broadband infrastructure, as well as some other things like, will children have to stay in this for the full year? Or could they come in and out of this program by semester? I kind of view this like almost like another school choice option, like a magnet school. If this is what you choose to do, then that would probably be your school for the year, or at least for the first semester. But there are some other details like that we still need to work through.
Now, this curriculum would not necessarily run concurrent with the standard in-classroom curriculum. In other words, you couldn't, like you said, you couldn't go back and forth because potentially the two curriculums would not be exactly parallel. Is that correct?
Possibly. I think that what this would allow is for the virtual teacher to pair in their professional learning committee with their other peers of that same grade level. So it could be as closely aligned to what all students are receiving from a face-to-face environment. There could be some subtle differences, but I think we would strive to make it align as much as we can to what all the other students are receiving in a face-to-face environment.
I would encourage that. I'm sorry. Who was that?
I
Just
have a question when you're done, Gary.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we should aim along those lines as much as possible. And anticipation, there may be more demand this first semester with the uncertainty, with the hope at when we get into January of 2021, we may be in a different place and there may be more students that utilize this for the fall semester, but want to transition back to the traditional school, whatever it looks like in January of 2021. So certainly at the semester break, the students are ending up as closely aligned as possible. That's just my thought.
Okay,
So,
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, so I don't want to get too much in the weeds, if you will, but K through second is very hands-on and very tactile learning. So how would that work online? I just have a hard time wrapping my head around how that would work at all.
It would have to involve, I mean, that's a good point, and that's why I mentioned maybe you know, if we did something like this, it could start with third grade. It could even start with fifth grade if you wanted to think about it like that. But your K2, I would imagine, would require a heavy dose of parental involvement and accountability and the ability to help guide students from home as well. So which obviously for our youngest of students may be a further burden on parents. So that's another reason why we're still exploring that concept.
And my other question is, instead of doing it school by school, I know in high school when my son did online classes, it was with one specific teacher. Have we thought about using one specific teacher or teachers plural to do the online classes instead of live streaming into a classroom? Do one specific teacher?
Yes. So under this plan, you know, dedicated remote learning, it would be by grade level with one dedicated teacher.
So instead of having a live feed in a classroom.
Correct. That teacher delivering instruction may be in her classroom or may be in another part of the building, or may
other, but not with other students active in the room.
Correct. There wouldn't be any students in the room.
So they'd be
Okay.
dedicated for this purpose.
Correct.
That teacher would be dedicated to this entirely. Okay.
So just for clarity, a teacher could not do virtual as well as face-to-face.
So it's, and again, I know it gets confusing. It's two different issues here.
Right.
The short answer is yes. If we are in plan B of 50% or less of kids where students are, you know, half of your classes in your building and half of your classes at home, our goal is to, while you're at home, is to actually watch a live streaming scenario so that you don't miss out on instruction while the other kids are there. On this concept where it is 100% virtual, which is kind of plan C, whatever, 100% remote learning, that would be done by one teacher of that grade level. So it's yes and yes, I guess.
Sure. Is this going to be labeled Plan D?
It might be. I don't know. It's kind of separate from. It's like I said. It basically is a concept where a family chooses to have Plan C, remote learning, 100% of the time, but it would be a dedicated teacher within that building.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a demand for this approach, perhaps even when we're outside of the current situation. So I fully support staff moving forward. I tend to agree with Christina. I think we should focus, at least initially, on 3 to 5 on up. I think K2 is going to be pretty difficult. If somebody wants to, you know, take that on after you get to a comfort level with the other pieces, more power to you. But I think initially, because we know for sure we're going to have the equipment, the students are going to be a little bit older and more familiar with going through this route. Just my initial thoughts are focus on 3 to 12. Any other comments?
I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree with 3 and 12. I'm thinking about the teachers as well. Will the salary change
No.
depending on, okay. And the students will be provided with transportation as well if they're face-to-face.
Yes. And we are working on our specific reopening plans under Plan A, B, and C. Today you saw Plan C, what that draft may be, but Plan A and B. So as soon as the governor makes the announcement in the weeks to follow, we'll be issuing that, and that will speak to transportation, operations, child nutrition, everything you can kind of think of based off what the state has said that we need to think about with reopening. and that will be presented to the board when that document is ready for public consumption.
I just want to make a comment that everyone, not just board members, but anyone that might watch this meeting understands the Herculean task ahead of not only our school system, but every school system in the state. July 1st, the governor is supposed to say which one of the three options we will start off with. And we're supposed to open schools in August 17th. So that's that's a month and a week or two before we're supposed to have all this ready. And two of the options are totally different from what anybody is ever used to traditional school being like. Now that's like taking whatever work you do for a living and saying in a month and a half, there's a good chance that your entire world is going to change. And if parents, what have you, don't understand, and there is nobody that has this figured out yet for us to model. Everybody is on their own. I cannot get my mind around the task ahead of us to try and get this thing figured out in the short time frame we have and make it work. So I want to compliment staff for having to come up with three options, and then chances are two of them are going to be totally different than what we're used to, and we got to make it work in a month from now. So
thank you for that, Mr. Sides. I'll add that it is a huge mind shift, and it is a huge change no matter what happens in the fall and what the decision is going to be. I'll also want to commend our staff, our principals, our teachers who are working just like we are at the senior level to try to figure out, because make no mistake, all of our schools have to develop their own school plans for reopening under Plan A, B, and C. And that is also a huge effort at the local school level. And then obviously communicating those local plans to families and to students. So it is a giant undertaking. And I certainly, we all appreciate the board's understanding and really want our parents to be patient with us. We're going to get there. I know you're probably really waiting for a lot of information. It's coming. We're still building on that based on what the governor is going to say. But I appreciate your compliments, Mr. Sides. Thank you.
Okay. And you're looking for some direction on this item, action to present to the full board. I'm sorry, do you have a comment, Candace?
Yeah, I would also like to comment staff, teachers, as well as UPS for your time, patience, and hard work with this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sides, I think what I was thinking about is ideally if we have a full proposal ready on a virtual option by the July 7th board meeting, which is next week, with this committee's permission, and I will certainly consult with the board chair, we may want to put this item on the agenda for approval pending we are able to work through some of these details, but within the next week. If not, what I would propose is that when we present our school reopening plans under Plan A, B, and C, that this be part of those reopenings for approval, and that would be presented at due time sometime later in July. I do not want to wait until August because I think we've got to let our families know what their options are going to be and what choices they're going to have. So I would say ideally we'd like to get something to the July 7th board meeting if we're ready. If not, I may ask the curriculum committee to do an emergency called meeting if we need,
Sure.
and then another board meeting just on reopening plans sometime in the middle of July.
Just to clarify, we are going to develop this plan no matter what option the governor dictates next week or later this week, correct?
That is correct. We are working on a Plan A, a Plan B, and then you've seen Plan C, as are all schools, because we believe, based on what we've heard and what we've seen, that all schools in the school district will need to be prepared to fluctuate between all plans and all models during the school year. And so if there ever is a point where we're all back in school and all of a sudden a singular school, because of the number of confirmed cases they have, or the school system has to move straight into remote learning overnight, which is basically what happened, back in March, we have to be prepared to continue to deliver instruction in that environment. So we are going to present a reopening plan for all three plans: Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C.
Is that, and Tina, Candace, does that work for you, taking this approach?
Yes, there's so many variables that our staff has to work with. I'm absolutely fine with them calling an emergency meeting and updating us and moving forward, even with an emergency board meeting after that, just to update us, because, this is going to be a daily changing thing, I believe. And, a Herculean task doesn't adequately describe what our staff is going through.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine the pressure that they're under, trying to make everything and fit together with so many variables. And, I'm asking parents just to please be patient and be positive, especially in front of your kids, about the going forward this year. It's new for everybody. And, if we present it in a positive way, I think it'll make everything run much smoother.
I agree. I think the important thing to impress upon parents right now, to address your specific concerns about your child, no matter what the governor decides, we will be offering this option. And we will encourage anyone that feels it's in their child's best interest to go this route, no matter what everybody else will be doing. This will be offered. So you will have this option no matter what.
That's what we're working towards. And if we can offer that as part of our reopening plans, and we're ready to present that next week, July 7th, then we'll be prepared to do that. If not, to go back, if we need to call a specially called meeting and a specially called curriculum committee meeting, then we will be in touch with this committee and let you know.
Okay. Any more comments, suggestions, thoughts on this plan?
Okay. I'm okay with that. And another survey will not be sent out, correct?
We do not plan to send another survey out. I know that our principals are working with teachers on some of their ideas as well. Whether or not they may be doing surveys is at the local school level, but for parents and families, we do not plan to send another survey out district-wide.
Okay.
I do believe that if we have some principals that got a lower response rate on the district survey, they may reach out to parents, but just for their local school, to make sure that they had a chance to complete it or come up with their own school survey. But we don't have any more plans to have a district-wide survey.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure staff will prepare a full-blown marketing campaign as we get a little closer, to make sure that all parents are aware of this option for our student population that we end up deciding to offer it, whether it's K through 12 or what have you. So
That is
yeah.
correct. Part of our reopening plan for virtual learning or Plan A, B, and C is going to be a communication strategy. So that will be included.
Excellent. Okay. Any other comments? All right. Item 4A, items to be taken to the full board. That would be item 3A, which was recommended. I assume that will go through the consent agenda for our meeting next week. Unless emergency meeting is required, and if there is business to be conducted by the committee, our next meeting will be July 30th. We'll have to wait and see if that will be in person or that will be remote. We'll decide that at a later time. And unless there's any other business to come before the committee, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, need a second.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great day.
Thanks.